being adult to me personally, I think the first thing that comes to mind is responsibility. And I don't know if it's something that was shaped by the way, like the kind of pressures I have right now as a foreigner, right, who's immigrating to Canada, who is establishing myself in Canada, and having like lots of things to think about. Responsibility for sure. But also, it's kind of like a responsibility to obviously take care of myself, like, this whole thing about career, finance, but also responsibility to build the life that I want for myself. Responsibility to saturate my life and shape it in the way that I want to. And here we're talking about dreams, goals.
It's not necessarily being busy, it's just not having as much free time. I think, it's also a time for a lot of opportunity that you don't get when you're younger. I know it's a cliche that when people are younger, they're just dying to grow up. But now that I have the opportunities that I didn't have when I was younger, I have a car, it's a whole new thing that I feel like, oh my God, adulting is really working out in my favor in those little things.
So as a fourth-year student, I feel like I'm going through a quarter-life crisis because I don't know what the hell my life will be like after university. I've always had these expectations for myself that I felt were realistic, where I would get this perfect job after university or this really cool journalism internship, finally move out of my parents' house, and overall have a greater sense of self-sufficiency and independence. Some things that can be pretty important to officially be considered an adult, or at least what I think is important to be considered an adult. But given the situation in the housing market and the job market now being incredibly hard to crack into, the expectations I had for myself seem like a distant reality, that my adulting phase isn't really looking what I hoped it would be like. A report on living arrangements and affordability found that 1 in 5 young Canadian adults live in unaffordable housing, spending 30% of their income on housing. Everyone talks about the job they want for their career after university, but I feel like no one really discusses what life is like after university. Like, how is someone supposed to navigate through this crazy high cost of living while trying to move out? Or the time it takes to even find that job after university? And what does your social life look like after university? Does anyone else feel alone in their 20s? To answer these questions that have been plaguing my mind, I was able to speak to 2 UofT alumni students, Lydia Telenkova and Noor Zahadi, exploring what their transition has been like after university.
My expectation of being an adult and graduating and after, the life after fourth year was definitely more of like I'll get a job and I'll be working in an office and I'll be having money and it's going to be so fun and it's going to be, just like the movies and I'm going to be so successful. And, it just didn't work out that way.
Noor Zahadi majored in political sciences and minored in sociology and history at UTSC. She currently lives with her parents and works for her dad's printing company. Her day-to-day at work can be quite hectic with performing different tasks from marketing and design work to sweeping and carrying heavy equipment.
So I wake up, I go straight to work, and I just, help my dad out in every way I can. A lot of it is physically demanding. A lot of it is on the computer, but it's really, because it's your own business, you just really do a little bit of everything, which I think is really fit for me. I cannot handle that routine.
Noora shares that the one thing she definitely misses from her undergrad life is the freedom. I'd like to say that Noor and I had similar expectations of what adult life would look like through this new transition. She thought she would have the amazing corporate job, to being able to finally move out from her parents' house, but it didn't play out that way. In fact, it was just the opposite.
I didn't move out. I still haven't because I realized the city is very expensive. And I have lost touch with all of my friends, so definitely not doing good on the social side of things. And, I don't have my own place. I don't have the privacy I thought I will. And I don't have an office job because I realized I hate office jobs. I hate corporate culture. I can't do it. So, it's completely different. I thought I've never watched Suits, but people are always like, oh, life is not like Suits. I thought it would be like Suits. It is not like Suits.
Nora shares that living with her parents after graduating from university has its fair share of issues and benefits. The negatives range from the lack of privacy, which as a fellow brown person with brown parents, I can completely relate. Similarly, I can relate to the positives, like never having to pay for rent or having the expectation to.
Negatives are, there's a lot you can't do. For example, I would love to bring my partner home, and I still do, and they like him very much, but it is difficult to get any sort of privacy, and, you can't even like hold hands because we're a brown family and it's just awkward, and I don't want to do that. But, it's those are the things that I'm like, oh my God, I wish I had my own place to bring my partner home, to work out in the middle of the living room maybe, or, I like to cook certain food that my parents don't like, but I always cook for them, so I always cook their food. And it's like, oh my God, I wish I could just make lasagna. But no, you have to make rice. So it's definitely not without downfalls. But at this point in life, I think I'm just happy that I get to see them every day. We're Middle Eastern, so my parents don't expect me to pay rent. My parents don't expect me to pay rent, and this is a big thing because I had a lot of friends whose parents expected them to pay rent.
Nora knows right now it's quite unrealistic to find a place despite her earning around $21,000 a month. As of right now, the average bedroom cost in Toronto, one of the most expensive cities to live in after Vancouver, is around $2,457 per month. Nora shares that her sister, who also was a UofT alumni, wasn't able to move out until the age of 25. According to 2021 data from Statistics Canada, 35.2% of young adults aged 20 to 34 still live with a parent. This number is a 5% increase from 2001. As in 2001, it was found that 30% of adults aged 20 to 34 lived with a parent. There are so many reasons why young adults will live with parents, and it seems harder now to move out. There are two factors that can explain it: Canada's unaffordable housing crisis and student debt. Many young Canadians cannot afford to buy a home due to the cost of housing being higher than their income. In fact, an article by the Global News found that since the pandemic, house prices have risen to 44%. It also means that there are not enough homes for the amount of people. There has been a demographic population boom with new immigration and not enough housing for everyone. In other words, housing demands can't keep up with the population. The Royal Bank of Canada actually warned that Canada will need more construction of houses and rentals, or Canada will be short 120,000 units by 2026. But for a new adult to afford a home and to move out can also be hindered by student debt. A report by the Ontario Real Estate Association, also known as OREA, that surveyed 750 post-secondary graduates that took on student debt, 750 who did not, found that student debt was one of the biggest barriers in home ownerships. Graduates who took on student debt owed about $14,500 on average in student loans. 42% of those graduates were looking to move out of the province for more affordable housing, and the other half said that they planned to stay in the family home for the next decade. Moving out, however, wasn't the only thing that didn't follow the expectations Nora set for herself. Another was cracking into the job market.
Could you, so I know like a lot of students start applying to jobs like earlier, like in January. Like as a fourth year student myself, I'm looking for jobs right now.
Yeah.
It's that season, right? Could you explain like how, I know you said like you didn't really have anything planned out, but could you explain how the job process and looking for a job went for you before you even got to the corporate role?
Yeah, so I actually started in my third year because I didn't really have an idea of what I wanted to do. So in third year, I started going to, random job placements, random info sessions, trying to see if I have an interest in anything at all. Come fourth year, around like January, I started applying. I started networking. It was a lot of networking because I kept hearing people say, it doesn't work anymore if you just apply or if you just give your resume. You have to know people. So that's what I did. I went really hardcore on LinkedIn and going to job fairs and career fairs and info sessions and talking to people and making connections. And that was really it for pretty much a year and a half, was applying to jobs, 10 jobs every day and networking every day with different people, online, sometimes in person. And I would get a lot of interviews. Which was good, which was, a little hopeful because I did have work experience and it was all relevant and whatnot. But at the end of the day, I would not get the positions, So I would go through, the thing about today's job market is, you would go through 3-4 tiers of interviews, and at the end of it, they're just like, oh, sorry, we decided we're not hiring anyone. And it's just a really, massive letdown. So you get your hopes up every time and it just crashes. So that was it for me for a year and a half.
It took Nora a year and a half to find her first corporate job that she eventually ended up hating.
I didn't like my coworkers. They were not nice. It was just terrible all around. So yeah, I would say I had a lot of expectations and a lot of fantasies that just didn't work out.
She found that although she had relevant work experience, utilized tools like job fairs, coffee chats, and networking platforms like LinkedIn, nothing worked for her. She was really defeated through the process. The October 2023 Statistics Canada's Labour Force Survey found that the unemployment rate was 5.2%, a 0.7% increase since April. If we zoom in and just look at young adults, the survey shows that people from the age of 15 to 24 had more than double the rate of unemployment at 11.4%, 2.4 times higher than the unemployment rate for individuals aged 25 to 54, which was at 4.8%. Unfortunately, this number was not surprising, as youth unemployment, according to the survey, has always been historically high.
I'm a career counselor. I'm also a registered counseling therapist. And so we help people with the career decision-making piece of transition when it comes to finding a new job or just not knowing, who they are, what they want to do.
Laura Cohen works at Canadian Career Counseling, an organization helping individuals seeking career support. She has many undergraduate students from the age of 18 to 24 years old come through her doors seeking support. Laura finds that this age group in particular is popular and struggles the most because there's anxiety around investing into the right career and degree.
What would you say you see undergrad students struggle with the most when it comes to their careers, like from your point of view as a career counselor?
Going back to what I said, like this indecision around what to pick, there's a few categories. So there's that category of I don't know what I want, and just kind of picking something that maybe somebody told them would be a good decision, or what their peers thought would be a good decision. Another kind of undergrad student are the students who have maybe a one-track mind and they're like, I just want to do this one thing since I was 2 years old. I want to go into dental school, or I want to be a psychologist, for example. But they come to us because they're not sure if they would actually get into the program, because these are like highly competitive programs. So they want a plan B, and they feel sort of panicky about that because they don't know if they'll get in, and they don't even know what a plan B would look like because they've just been so hyper focused and haven't really exposed themselves to other options. Another category of people would be somebody who might be pursuing something because of family expectations. That's a very common one. What other people would want them to do, and them wanting to maybe honor the choices that their parents would want them to make, rather than what feels good. And so sometimes that could lead to burnout, or it could lead to just dissatisfaction or feeling lost and confused. So it's kind of looking at what the client values, what they're actually interested in, what's aligned with their personality. There's also reality factors at play too. Sometimes people have a disability or a mental health issue, or they have financial constraints, so they're limited in terms of what kind of careers they can pick. And so we take that into consideration and understand that we work with people of all walks of life, but those tend to be common ones with people at that age.
She explains that it can take about 6 months to find a job, and for students to be successful, they should really utilize the tool networking.
Yeah, I think there's an assumption, with a lot of people, that you can just find a job online. And a lot of jobs are posted online, and a lot of people have success with finding work online. But in Canada, most jobs are found through the hidden job market. In fact, 60% of jobs are found through the hidden job market. So that's basically through who you know, because people like to hire people that they know and trust. So that could literally be an acquaintance of an acquaintance, somebody you met on LinkedIn. So we really try to emphasize that, or kind of demystify the importance of that. And sometimes people need coaching on how to even do that.
It's also very common, she says, for one to struggle with mental health when job hunting.
If we're talking about job search and specifically, it takes a lot of resilience and patience and emotional gusto. Like it can be personally taxing when you're trying to find work and you haven't found work. You know, it could take 6 months to a year sometimes to find a career related job, sometimes longer. So the process of mental health, I think it looks differently for everybody, but it's quite common to see just a general frustration and general kind of exhaustion or self-doubt when people are trying to find work and they can't find work. Some people have really great luck and there's no mental health issues. It's like some people are doing this work and they're just curious about doing this work and they're doing okay. They just need a guide to guide them along. But there's just a lot of, like I said, that sort of existential anxiety, like young people in their 20s who are maybe looking for work and don't have success might start to doubt themselves and then spiral and like, who am I? What am I doing again? So there's that like existential anxiety again. But yeah, that stress is really common when it comes to job search. And so we talk a lot about stress management. Like you can easily just spend 13 hours a day every day looking for work on your laptop. That's not healthy. So we talk sometimes about having a balance, like treating your job search like a job and doing things that are fun, spending time outside, spending time with friends and family.
Lydia also shared the same sentiment as Nora on the job searching process. However, the stressors she experienced through the process had a lot to do with her status as an international student.
When you are writing like a cover letter for, 30th time now and for different industries that you're interested in, it is exhausting. It is really exhausting, especially after just being done with graduate school applications. Oh my.
Lydia is an international student who studied sociocultural anthropology and a minor in art history and media culture. She graduated in June of 2023 and currently lives alone. She shares that she's been lucky to have her parents financially support her through this new transition in life. Right now, she works as a design research lead and program coordinator at a design thinking firm, where her 9 to 5 consists of a lot of meetings and working with many different teams. Lydia's journey coming to study at UofT as an international student was quite interesting, but I feel like it also speaks to the unpredictability and uncertainty that international students generally face. International students in Canada face a wide variety of issues as students and after graduation when applying for jobs. Studies have found that some of the issues include food insecurity, mental health, discrimination, and having to deal with the housing crisis, some which were exacerbated during the pandemic. In a 2021 international student survey that surveyed more than 40,000 international students across the country, found that students who identified as Asian and Black face discrimination and harassment off campus and on campus.
I was 18 and I decided to move to Canada, and literally it happened overnight. I was sitting in my dad's office and playing some video games or something like that, and eventually my mom just finished the call with my brother. When they were talking about moving, they were talking about these plans for career and stuff. And then my mom, after that call, I don't know what happened in that call. But she turned around and she was like, hey, do you want to move to Canada and study there at UofT maybe? And I was like, sure. And that's how it happened. And that's crazy because I definitely did not know what I was signing up myself for. Definitely.
After the talk, she started getting ready to apply to Canadian universities by studying for the IELTS test, a standard English language test used by UofT and many other institutions to test English proficiency for higher education and global migration. Lydia, in her interview, shared that her undergrad is a time she fondly looks back at and treasures.
I think I did everything I could possibly do in undergrad. Like, I can feel that. All the stupid things and all the very, very smart right choices, right? I think that right now I do look back at my undergrad with just so much enjoyment and also really treasuring that time.
Her job search, though, not so much. She felt an infinite amount of pressure to get a job as quickly as she could and applied to the post-graduation work permit, also known as PGWP, to help with her visa process.
So I knew that, okay, the only thing I knew, I have to stay in Canada. That's the whole thing. That's the whole idea why I moved here. I'm immigrating here. I have to stay in Canada. That's the only thing that I knew. So you know how I had only 90 days to either find a job or apply for study permit and then go to grad school, which will delay my immigration process, right? So you have 90 days, and I got my job. I started working on day 82. So I was so close to just, crying and everything. But no, I did cry multiple times during this whole thing. But essentially, what happened was that, yes, it took me several months.
After graduation, international post-secondary students or any foreign nationals have 180 days to apply for a PGWP after they receive their final marks. The permit allows international students who have finished their degree programs for longer than 8 months to gain professional experience in the Canadian workforce. PGWP, as UofT website puts it, is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Students don't necessarily need to apply for the permit, as they can start working after graduation if they are offered a job, but they need to apply within a time period, as students' study permits are only valid 90 days after their program ends. Lydia started applying for jobs in her 4th year during January and got a job offer in June. It took her 5 months to finally receive a job offer of where she works now.
One thing we talk about is like the loneliness, like the feeling of like
Absolutely.
the loneliness. Do you feel like that's a feeling that you've experienced like since graduating university and like transitioning to this like new phase of life?
100% all the time. Even if I wasn't like super social in university, the fact that I could sit in a class and be surrounded by people my age who would give their opinions and I could talk to, that was still such a gem that I didn't realize at the time. And now it's like, obviously my family I see the most, but I just don't get a lot of time talking to people or going out or anything social. And I miss the fact that you have a sort of like forced socializing in university. You have to talk to people. You're forced to be in a group. I wish someone would force me to be in a group right now. I would really like that.
There's definitely a feeling of loneliness sometimes, right? And I feel like it's very contextual to what exactly we're talking about, but even during undergrad, right? You're still surrounded by strangers pretty much. And even when you are, for example, I'm from Victoria College, right? When I was passing by this like Nat's Cafe in the main building, you're saying hi to a bunch of people. And because I was occupying lots of student leadership positions, like I knew a lot of people, but even more people knew me. So it was just lots of like, hey, hi, like lots of like looks like that, and just like trying to be social. But there is a feeling that, okay, you're constantly surrounded with people, you're constantly in this atmosphere, you constantly have an option who to reach out to, who to meet, who to see. Here, during the day, you're really planning on who you want to see after work, right? And sometimes it does feel lonely, but I feel like, to me personally, it was kind of lonely in my undergrad, and it's kind of lonely now.
If you ever searched up loneliness and 20s on the internet, you'll probably come across many YouTube videos, TikToks, and even Reddit threads talking about how lonely your 20s can be, how it can be a confusing and mentally taxing time. In 2018, the BBC created a survey of loneliness in which 55,000 people took part in to see who experienced the feeling of loneliness the most. The survey found that 16 to 24-year-olds reported feeling the most lonely, while older individuals shared that young adulthood felt the most lonely. Being a 20-year-old myself, I can say without a doubt that I have experienced that loneliness, especially when it comes to the decisions I want to make in my life and seeing friends kind of go off on their own paths. It's a feeling that Nora and Lydia have felt too as well, but both in really different ways. For Nora, experiencing this level of loneliness can come from the lack of a social life and her friends not being as close as they once were. However, she shares that living with her parents has helped with that feeling of loneliness in this new transition of adulthood.
I'm telling you, I don't have a social life. And I promise you, if I lived alone, I would not even be talking to my parents. Like, it would leave. It would just be empty. So the way I was talking about being forced into like a group discussion was a good thing. Living with your parents is sometimes a good thing, because at the end of the day, I get to talk to people. I get to tell them about my day. If I'm going through something, I get to talk to them. So it's a plus in those ways. And plus, you know, when you get older, you like your parents more. You gossip with them now, and that's a good thing. And I will tell you, I literally had a breakdown today in the car with my mom, and we were both crying and screaming. So sometimes it gets bad, but sometimes it gets better.
That's great to hear.
As an international student, Lydia's feeling of loneliness, which I think a lot of international students can relate to, really comes from her parents not physically being there with her.
Well, I didn't have parents at my graduation, so I had like a couple of friends, and that was definitely something that I know if I had my parents there, it would have felt a little bit differently, right? And I feel like that's something that also add to my like maturity, I guess, or something. I know myself that I can solve all the problems in the world that I have, right? But when you are doing that, just someone making you a cup of tea and hugging you like your mom, right? And saying like, hey, everything's going to be okay. And you just feel better, like instantly you feel better. But now you have to be the person who go ahead and make yourself a cup of tea and hug yourself. I started practicing this hugging.
I love
like,
that.
Literally.
Yeah.
And that's honestly, that's kind of sad too. But
You have to be your own support system.
yeah, you have to be your own support system for sure. That's a reality for so many international folks. Like that is a reality. Some people can say, oh, you can always call them, right? Well, sometimes, and that's what happened to me in my fourth year, closer to the end of fourth year, life happens to your family too. And sometimes they can call you and say, hey, actually something is happening, like we will not be able to be in touch as often as it was. And then before that, I was in touch with them maybe like once in 2 weeks or something. And then just like every like a couple of months without any connection, and like all life events are happening to you, and like what is going on? I need some person who I can trust to just like tell everything and ask questions, and honestly not to necessarily get some right answer.
Lydia shares that she hasn't been able to hug her mom in 2 years, and she's counting down the next 4 years to finally be able to hug her mom again. Regardless of all the struggles in this transition and into this next phase of life for Lydia and Nura, there's always a lot to look forward to in the future while adulting. Lydia sees her next year in adulting, learning to balance work life and her personal life.
I feel like I'm gonna work for a year, absolutely, right? Hopefully, getting some promotion at my current organization I'm working at, and just even through that job, I see how I'm growing personally and professionally. So I will keep doing that. And honestly, I am very excited about building more and building new community networks. I'm building more friendships and really staying engaged with social life, because I feel like the biggest fear for people who are graduating is that, okay, social life will disappear. Like the second someone, announce your name on that stage, that's it. You are done. No, you're not done, but you will have to put some effort in, right? And I feel like I'm really excited about, I already joined some groups, like I love dancing, right? So I found that such a joy to be dancing with those people, and just like trying to make friends, trying to see the world.
And Nura, maybe one day getting ready to move out.
I think definitely more financial freedom. A big one. I hope to make more money. I hope to save more. Aside from that, honestly, I hope sometime in like the next 5 years I do move out. I really hope so, because I'm getting old. and it's getting embarrassing. So I do want to move out. You know, depends what time of the day you catch me, but if you catch me late at night, I will say I'd like to be married, but that's not going to happen.
Although I realized that my image of new adulthood might not ever be a reality due to factors like the housing and job market, Nora's and Lydia's journey have taught me that the struggles and the realities of life are never a reason to have more optimistic outlook on the future, and to never let the feelings of uncertainty, sadness, and stress about the future take over in this next transition of life.